What's up, it's Serum from On Point Samples. Welcome to the second video in the lead series. In this video, I'm going to use the information of the first one. So if you didn't watch that yet, go watch that. It will really help you as we go. And I'm going to summarize this information into a few very well-known leads that you need to know as a hardstyle producer. You can literally make hardstyle, rawstyle, hardcore, anything with this. And it's a very nice place to start. And combined with the information of the first video, you can take these starting points. You can also download the presets in our freebie vault. I'll add the template. And then in the third video, we're going to cover layering. And in the final video, we're going to add processing, the kick and whatever. So after this whole series, you'll have a very good understanding of how to make leads, layers, and everything for hardstyle production. It will basically kind of be a summary of this first video's information into very usable leads, in case you haven't picked that up yet. So I'm opening Serum, and the first lead we're going to make a very clean lead. The second one will be a classic hardstyle lead. We're going to make a semi-raw lead, a very raw lead, and some other variations. For clean leads, it's very simple. I don't really do anything else than adding a little bit of detune, not too much, and just not detuning it like this, but just keeping it around this range. And right off the bat, here's a cool thing that people don't really know about Serum, but if you detune right here, you can see how the saws are stacked against each other. And you can change that mode right here to, for example, super, and as you can see, it changes the way the detune is stacked, which is really cool. So if you want slight variations, take a look into that, and I think this one sounds good. How I want to spice up my clean lead, for example, is simply add a compressor. And this is starting to act at around -20 dB, and then it pulls down the signal, and it takes around, that's what a compressor does, 50 milliseconds. So that means 50 milliseconds we get a little bit of volume, which is the spike, the clicky sound, and then it compresses. And I bring back the volume a little bit with the gain. Now, I also really want to get rid of the lows right here. And a nice trick I use in the Serum is take down the envelope with a short attack like this. We're going to add this to the frequency here. I don't want to add it too much. It's a feeling you want to do, I guess. But this is just what I add. This is our clean lead. It's kind of like impossible to do this without having a layer as well. But because usually, as you'll see me do that in the third video, is you make a layer and you adjust these leads on the go. I guess this is also just a big masterclass on how to use Serum for different things. What I want to add maybe on a clean lead is we already have this detune right here. But something cool you can add is hyper dimension. I don't want dimension, I just want some extra detune. So open the mix 100% so I hear what kind of effect I'm making. And then I just take down the mix. Now for a clean lead, I also want to add a little bit of soft clipping, but nothing too crazy. And that's about it. So here's our first clean lead. For our second lead, I'm just gonna take the melody and put it in another instance of Serum. Why I'm duplicating the preset before I kind of go into the next one is because I already have this voicing enabled and pitch bend right here and some information in the preset, which saves me time, you know. That's our first lead, which was the clean lead. Now we're going to make the classic hardstyle lead. What you're going to want to do with a classic hardstyle lead is create a random LFO that's going to affect the pitch bend. And Atmospheres has a video online as well in which he shows how to create this lead in Silent One, Viper, and all these plugins. I feel like a hardstyle video on leads wouldn't be complete with this lead, so I'm just including it. Here's my random LFO. It's not really made perfectly, but it'll work for now. If you add this to the chorus pitch, get that effect, and now we can go in the matrix and take down the output, and we increase the rate. There's our kind of classic hardstyle lead, and there's multiple ways to get this sound. I don't recommend making an LFO like this. Actually remove the modulator. You can actually mod source this from the Chaos one, which you'll find in global, and you can increase the rate to very high. You can see it's doing random stuff. And now we have a lot of chaos. So in the matrix, take down the output. And now we also have that effect, which is really cool. Final way you can do this as well is having a noise oscillator, take down the level, and we're simply going to modulate the FM from A based on the noise oscillator. Noise, white noise in this case, is also just a random generation of waves, and that's why it's going to result in the same sound. Now we can also, you know, maybe see what happens, and we also add the chaos there. we get a very, very detuned kind of classic hardstyle lead. And how I like to spice up these leads is with an attack. You can keep it clean like this, but what I like to add is on the master tune, I'm going to add LFO2 on envelope. In the matrix, you can assign this simply LFO2, global, master tune, and 19 is an octave in Serum. So let's take 19. And now we get this really nice attack in the lead. And for your main leads, you'll see this in the layer video. This works really well because it gives that extra effect. And especially here at pop, if you add a compressor, because the compressor is basically going to hit at around this point. You know, it's just estimation, but there's a little bit of attack in the compression, which means normal volume is right here, and then it gets pulled to the threshold. So it kind of accentuates this attack. Add some gain. Now you can choose to do the same things we did with the clean lead. You can literally take a little bit of detune and just see how it affects the preset as you go. As for this classic hardstyle lead, I really like to add some unison and then take the detune down a lot. In global, we can change the mode to, for example, random. You know, you can see it kind of gets out of phase and into phase. So maybe we want to use super and then play around with the randomized phase. It's tough because right now it gets too detuned, and right here it gets too phasey. We might be able to fix this if we add a little bit of distortion on tube mode. And we kind of do, but you know, instead of adding detune here, since we're getting these phase issues, I could also add detune in here, which gives a different type of detune. So slightly, since we're able to control the effect. So I like this more. Now, as you can see, if we tube distort this gets changed into a square wave. As you can see, I could go into basic shapes and take this one. We get that really squarey sound. So let's take a saw wave instead and then let tube distortion. It's kind of similar because you get that square sound. So I like to add diode 1. That is kind of the basic hardstyle lead, opposed to a clean one. It's just an iteration of these fast chaos type things that are affecting the pitch of this sound, which result in that really classic synth. Let's dive into the next one, which will be a very semi-Rawstyle kind of lead. So in this case, instead of having a random LFO affecting the fine tune, we're gonna have something like a sine wave, or in this case, this triangle. We're gonna add this to the fine tune first, and we are going to add no BPM, so we get a fast rate. And this is how we want to start. So you can also add this to the coarse pitch again and take down the output. And you already have that really raw sound, which is really cool. Then again, what I like to add for this lead as well is some attack. So envelope, and we're adding this to the master tune. So LFO2, envelope, global, master tune on 19, because that's an octave. So for these raw leads, I also want to add a little bit of distortion. This is not going to be the most aggressive raw lead. You can start to see the effects detune has on a saw wave if we add some unison, so around this range. For example, if we try a unison of 3, and then we play around with the detune, really try to hear how the movement or the wobbling sound changes in this raw lead. Kind of sounds like it's slowing down, and that has everything to do with phase. I don't even know what's going on, but I do know the effect. So it's a combination between the fine tune and the coarse pitch, because obviously if we add this same LFO, or if we do the same thing with the unison here, same effect, but it's combined in this case with the LFO affecting the pitch as well. And now we can also increase the unison. It just gets more detuned, and it's just what you want. You can also change the blend, which is a cool thing to do. Really put this detune on the side for movement, but you don't really hear it, because if I detune it too much, and have the blend like this. So it's equal. You can hear it's out of tune. Here's a clean one. And you don't hear the pitch anymore. So don't detune it too much. But if you take down the blend, you can. But you also get the movement. So that's a nice win-win. So this is kind of my semi-raw lead. I also like to add a compressor again with some gain. And I could add a little bit of hyperdimension. Not too much distortion. And that's kind of it. Also make sure to cut the bass. I didn't do it everywhere. You know, you don't actually need bass in leads, and I'm a big fan of adding 20,000 equalizers to cut the bass. So and you can hear this kind of got similar to this other one. That's also because we have the same type of modulation going on, I guess, with the pitch. But this one is just a little bit more clean and doesn't have that old school vibe. So that's our clean lead right there, the clean Rawstyle lead, I guess. So the fourth one is going to be a very raw Rawstyle lead. In this case, we're first going to do the same thing: BPM, high rate, bam, 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 coarse pitch, and LFO. Take down the output, and there you go. Then we're also adding this LFO2 attack because I just really think it works well with these raw leads. Then again, you don't have to. It's just a technique I showed you in the other video as well. You can create all your variations as you want and as you like. Now, for this one, I'm going to immediately add a filter and I'm going to go into band 24. Then I'm adding distortion. And as you can hear, tube doesn't really cut it that much for me. So I actually want to use 0 square. Because it preserves the highs, and since we're cutting highs and lows, we really need to reintroduce those harmonics that we cut out, right? We cut out all these frequencies and distortion brings them back up, but we need a lot of distortion for that. So, and with this one, we're really going to make this lead scream or talk, I guess. So you can add a little bit of modulation on the cutoff. So it's going to move between different mid frequencies, resulting in this talking sound. This is that really old school, but also subsonic kind of, yeah, whatever. It's really raw. A lot of Rawstyle artists use this for screeches for their leads. It's a very nice way. So you can choose to add oscillator B. Make sure you select it here as well and put that 1 octave up. And then we're going to detune. And I want to keep clean detune instead of doing this. You could, but it's a lot. So I'd rather use 4 or 5. And really put it on the side. There you go. And you can increase the resonance to create these variations. So instead of having this filter here, you could also just use the pre-mode in here and have this filter play around the same way. Same effect, or double. That's kind of the lead. You can really go overboard if you add multiband compression and take down the highs. But that's if you want to make screeches. I don't think a lead needs this much power because it's just too much. Get rid of the multiband and just add basic compression. So you can create variations on this lead by, for example, using FM from B. Or vice versa. And you can also obviously use FM from noise oscillator to get that classic lead. And now it's really just comes down to your preference. Instead of using this free distortion here, we can use this one. And you don't have to add a filter. You know, that's kind of it. If you don't need that much more than this, it's just a very raw lead. And in the first video, you saw all these techniques that you can combine to create variations on this lead. So go back if you missed that. So we have this one, classic one, and kind of the semi-raw one, and an extremely raw one. Cut the bass. So for the fifth one, I try to make a very detuned one because we need a very big detuned lead. We always do. So let's just add a lot of detune. It's very straightforward. And we're adding more detune 1 octave up. So we have the main one. We have this one. And that's it. But what I also want to introduce, because you kind of want to utilize a lot of voices, because big voices just means bigger leads. The more you have, the more your computer will crash, but it will also result in bigger hardstyle leads. So we're going to use the sub oscillator on saw mode, 1 octave up. And then we have this one, but we combine that. You'll see how this is important if we add chaos to the master tune. So let's go and take chaos 1 and assign that to the master tune. We kind of did the same with the LFO on the pitch. And we just open that up. But something important is that we put the type on this mode. It means it's bipolar right now and it's going to stay in key. It kind of moves between the minus and plus sign instead of just one side, which makes it out of key. So as you can hear. So now in the matrix, just in the global, a lot of rate. And then add a lot of detune. Take down the output. So as you can hear, we get that classic hardstyle lead again, but on the total thing. And a lot of chaos results in detune. And we can't detune the sub oscillator because there's no detune option except for the effects matrix, which we'll use as well. But I also want a little bit of that chaos going on the full thing. Now we're introducing oscillator A and B. And you can see how this is so different to... It has a lot of room, space, and just takes up more. And what I like to add in these, not always, what I could do is create a variation. In this section, we're going to even play around with more room by using the hyperdimension, adding detune. Nothing too much. And we're adding this here, the dimension. Not too much, this is delay. But this gives it a little bit of room, so yeah. And then we can also use the chorus for the exact same thing. So disable the hyperdimension for a second so you can hear it. And then a lot of mix. High rate, we want those highs. More feed, less depth. Like this. We give it room and we can use the dimension too. You don't want to add too much of this because we don't want a reverb or delay emulation. We just want this sound. Now we can add a little bit of compression. In this case, it's fine to create one with a multiband compression as well. It's a big difference. Here's the normal compression and the multiband. It has more energy and power, but it really depends on what you want and how it sits in the layer. Let's just play the most clean one. Then we have our classic one. Now we also have our semi-raw. And we have our really raw one. We also have this one, a very detuned one. And we have the more widened up version. And the multiband version. The final lead that's left to do is kind of a cool one, which is going to go and use a square wave like this. Second thing you want to do, and this is kind of like a dreamy, classy, I don't know, it's just a classic lead envelope on a very fast BPM. We're going to assign this to the global master tune, LFO1 global master tune, and we're going to go up 38, so 2 octaves. Now we have this really nice click in the beginning already. Now we're going to assign LFO2 to the chorus right here. And we're going to take down the amount. Obviously, it's a very drunk sound right now, so open the rate. And take down the output like this. And the trick in this lead is to add a little bit of distortion right now. And then also make sure you add the rise effect. This is going to kind of add a little bit of delay between starting and stopping. So for this finally, here's what you want to do. You put the rate on 11 Hertz or something like this, and it's going to affect the chorus pitch like this. By default, if you add this automation in the matrix, it's going to go bipolar. But this will result in an off-key sound since we're adding a riser. So that means that during the first 0.7 seconds, it's going to rise till it gets to that rate right here, which results in an off-key sound. Notice how it's off-key. Slightly off key. So how you fix that is going into the metrics and adding the type to unipolar. In this case, it will get off key after a while. You can hear it go up a little bit, and that's because it's going to start to wobble above the 0 instead of around the 0. So during the first 0.7 seconds, it's fine. It's going to sound good. But after that, it's not going to sound good. So I demonstrate it here. Here's an F note. And it takes 0.7 seconds to sound good, and here's another note, and you can start to hear it go off key. It gets off key, so that's why you don't want long notes if you use this, no longer than the rise. But what this results in is this very wobbly lead, and it's really cool. And that's kind of a basic lead as well. And Inspire, for example, this works so much easier. You have the same functionality, but it's going to be so easy. Here's Inspire for you. It's literally in LFO right here. You can have the same thing, just stretch like this. This would affect, this is an LFO, and this LFO should affect the pitch, and then you just add a riser like this, and it's a fade in, and it stays in key. It's so much easier. So Inspire, this will sound so much better. But in Serum, now you know the technique. It's rising until it gets into that wobbly sound. And you can still do this with a saw wave. But I think this sounds best, and it sounds really cool as well with a sine wave. But you need to make sure you distort this. And then it's kind of a square wave too, but you can also use downsample, and this is kind of how you make a pluck too. And you take down the envelope. There you go, now we have a plug. So you now know all these leads. Let's see how they sound in a layer, and in the other video I'll actually explain how this will sound good in total. Really full already, and this is just by doing random leads. So long video. If you're still here, appreciate you. I hope you learned something. Download this template for free, all these leads, with the link in the description. Join our freebie vault. We have thousands of free hardstyle sounds. Don't miss out on it. See you in the third video. Cheers.